Hey, what's going on everyone? In this review, I'll be looking at one of the more interesting master grades out there, Patlabor's AV-98 Ingram. Now there's been quite a few Master Grade Ingram releases, so let's break this down a little bit. In late 2001, we got the original Master Grade Ingrams, Unit 1, 2, and 3. They're all literally the same kit, but with altered shoulders, new heads, and a few different gimmicks. A few months later, in early 2002, we saw a re-release of Unit 2, but with an added set of blinking LEDs for the shoulders, and a slightly altered head. Again, it's the same build in every other respect. The last Master Grade Ingram releases were Unit 1 and 3 with their reactive armor. Again, same build, but this time with different armor pieces. And that brings us to the kit I'll be using in this review, 2007's Ingram Special Set. Sort of an all-in-one kit, coming with the original Unit 1, as well as the shoulders and heads to make Unit 2 and 3, plus it comes with the blinking LEDs for the Unit 2 re-release. Then to top it off, it comes with a nice gloss coating. It doesn't include any of the reactive armor though, so I won't be mentioning that in this review. Okay, now I'll be reviewing these kits in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and gimmicks. I'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end I can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully I can help you decide which version, if any, of these master grades to pick up. Okay, now enough exposition, let's get right into this build. These really aren't just your old school master grades, they're experimental old school master grades. First off, outside of the head and forearms, they have a full inner frame. This was pretty innovative for 2001. Of course, like other inner frames from this time period, the frame used in this kit is more about function than form. There's almost no details to paint up here. Thankfully of screws, and a lot of the key joints are just polycaps, so engineering wise, this thing is a mess. Still, there's some interesting builds for the pop-out gimmick in the leg and in the arm. There's also some nice little additions like the red wire for the arm and the use of rubber pieces for the antenna. The LED installation isn't as much trouble as you think. They're a little annoying to get through this rubber tubing, but it's nothing too crazy. There is a little bit of painting to do here. First up, all the visors and cameras on the heads come in clear, and there is no provided sticker. Thankfully the visor and the camera are separate pieces, so it's fairly easy to paint up in green and blue. I will note that the head for Ingram 2 needs a little extra white because the visor is a little bit wider. Next you'll probably want to add paint to the tip of the head. I guess because different versions of the Ingram use different colors here, Bandai decided to be easier to just use stickers. Finally, there's some minor details around the kit that look better with a little paint, like the windshield on the chest and these gray sections on the front and back of the ankles. The build for these kits were really out there, even for 2001. The build should be a slightly below average score of 2.5 out of 5, but I do have to give it some credit for trying some new things, so I'll bump it up to an average score. I might find it interesting. Now let's hope his appearance fares a little bit better. Out of the gate, I will remind you that since this is the special set version of this kit, it has a nice gloss coating. In my mind, the Ingram was made for a glossy finish, so this coating is really great. Of course, it makes nubs show up a little bit white and black, but still, it has a really nice contrast to it. I'd say if you're looking to get into painting, this might be a good place to start since you only really need 2 colors. All releases of this kit have a plated star on the chest, which is a great touch. When put side by side to its anime appearance, it's pretty obvious this kit was slimmed up forces this kit into some real awkward looking poses, but I'll get to that a little later. One of the weirdest aspects of this kit is how large it is. It's actually larger than most Master Grade Gundams. This special set comes with a large sheet of water slide decals. You get the decals for all 3 units, which is great. However, since this is a gloss coated kit, the water slides have little to no grip. They slide off and break all the time, so much so that I didn't even bother decaling up Unit 2 and 3. You could always top coat these, but the special set is already gloss coated, so I'm not sure it's the best idea. If you're really into decals, the standard release would be the way to go. The appearance of this kit is good for what it is. The colors are pretty good, but I'm not the biggest fan of the proportions. You also really need to paint up that 5. The gloss coating for this special set looks great, but it comes at the cost of bad decals and nubs, so it's not really a positive or a negative. Okay, now let's take a look over his articulation. As always, let's start with the feet. Well, they're just bricks. There's nothing going on here. The ankles are on a ball joint and a hinge, so you get movement similar to a Zeta Gundam. You get minimal sideways movement, but some solid forwards and backwards. You get a little more than a 90-degree bend from the 2 hinges in the knee. It's about average for its time period. However, they have a very flimsy feeling to them, even with kicks, but limited splits and twist. You get a surprising amount of movement from the chest, so much so you can actually pop up this rubber tubing. The shoulders are a ball and socket on a polycap, so you get similar movement to the Master Grade Ground Gundam. However, it's significantly held back by the size of these shoulders and the restrictive tubing. The arms themselves have a very tight 360-degree spin and about a 90-degree bend from the elbow. The inner frame here is really weak, and the rubber tubing pops up all the time. On top of that, this white piece disconnects from the inner frame literally every single time you spin the arm. I'm about at the point of just gluing it down. You also get a 360-degree spin from the forearm because of the weird engineering. The hands are all on ball joints. You get 3 sets of them too, the first being the classic trigger finger split, and the other 2 being a set of closed and open hands. The head is on a hinge and a ball joint, so you should get some decent movement, but it's really confined by this tubing. You'd think with the amount of screws in this inner frame, this kit would be more sturdy, like with the G Gundam kits, but they just aren't. This whole kit feels incredibly flimsy, and every bend gives you that ominous clicking sound. The rubber tubing also holds back a lot of these joints. I'll have to give the articulation a very low 2 out of 5. Yeah, I mean you get the 2 or 3 standard poses, but each one of them is a struggle to try and not snap something. And finally, let's take a look at these gimmicks. Now this is where stuff can get best I can. Let's start with the arsenal of Ingram 1. First you get their iconic gun. It comes in black, so no real paint needed. He can also hold it pretty well despite the lack of pegs. You also get this shield. I really like this design, and the kanji is a nice touch too. It just plugs into the arm and you're done. Next he comes with this baton. It comes in all white, so you're gonna have to paint it up. He can hold it even better than the gun though, because it's a smaller handle. However, instead of retracting like it does in the anime, you're actually given a dedicated retracted version for storing in the shield. A slightly odd gimmick is the optional parts for the chest. You can pop up these hatches and plug in these lights. Of course, they're all white, so you either have to use this poor looking sticker or paint them. And lastly, you get a closed visor for the head. It's a real nice touch, especially since the standard visor requires painting. Ingram 2 comes with all of the above, but it also throws in a shotgun. It comes in all black, so painting isn't that mandatory. He can also hold it just fine, but getting a 2-arm shooting pose can be quite difficult. There just isn't enough shoulder articulation for any cool poses. White is really important. Ingram 3 is the most bare bones of the original 3 releases. You get the gun, shield, full-size and retracted baton, and lastly you get the plug-in lights for the chest. Yep, there's no shotgun or extra visor, it's just the standard weapons. And lastly, there's the Ingram 2 re-release, which comes with these flashing LEDs. Everything else is exactly the same as the standard version. However, from what I hear, the shotgun comes in white for some reason. The LED flashing unit is amazing. They have a great flashing pattern to them, and they're super easy to turn on and off. Just pop off the armor on the backpack and flip up the switch. This is polycaps for 2 heads. Thankfully, it's a pretty common polycap, so if you've built a few Master Grades before, you probably have an extra somewhere. Now let's talk about the gimmicks for the actual suits. The main gimmick is their pop-out on the right arm. It's a real simple feature, so I've had no problems with it. I also really like this red wire you get, it's such a nice touch. And the second major gimmick is you can open up the right leg to reveal a storage location for the gun. It has a really cool sliding gimmick too. Next, the cockpit does open up. On most Master Grades it's kind of a pointless feature, but with this kit it reveals a very detailed pilot. They're actually large enough that you might be able to paint these up, unlike the usual Gundam pilots which are so small they're kind of pointless. Each Ingram comes with their corresponding pilot, with the special set coming with the full clip. However, if you want to go all out, then this special set is the way to go. It comes with pretty much every combination you could want. I'll give the gimmicks for these kits an above average 4 out of 5. Each one comes with what you would expect for that unit, and the pop-out gimmicks are really cool. Okay, now let's wrap this up for an average score. The build was a 3 out of 5. It's not beginner friendly at all, but I've got to give it some credit for being experimental. The appearance was a 3.5 out of 5. They look about right, there's no glaring flaws here. The articulation was a 2 out of 5. There aren't too many posing options and the inner frame just feels flimsy. And lastly, the gimmicks received a 4 out of 5. Each one comes with what you would expect, and the LED flashing unit is just such a great touch if you can track one down. Tallying all that up, dividing, and of course rounding, this kit receives a 3.1 out of 5. Or more accurately, it receives a 62.5%. This may be one of my lowest scores. Honestly, these kits haven't aged too well, and I just can't recommend them. Unless you know what you're getting into, I doubt you're really going to have much fun with this kit. I think most fans of Patlabor would be better off picking up the Robot Damashi instead. Sorry to end on a negative note, but hey, the best to help out. You can also recommend more kits for me to review, and I'll see what I can do. See you next time.